So in today's video, I'm going to show you how to set up a Google Sheet and a Google Form with different events that have a limited number of slots. And then every time the form is submitted, it'll fill that slot. And when the slots are gone, it'll automatically remove it from the Google Form. And each time an event is added, also add it to a Google Calendar. So let's just run through this real quick. Let's submit this. We'll go to submit another response, and that slot is now gone. If we go back here, we can see that it is indeed gone. It's been added here. If we go to our Google Calendar, we can see that event has also been added there. All right, so let's start by creating our event slots. And so we'll just call it something like all events or all slots, whatever you want to call it there. And then I'm going to add some columns here. So we'll do date. And then I'm going to do start and end time. If you want to do an all day event, I'll show you how to do that when we get to the script. And then let's do maybe a description. You could do a title as well. And I'll show you how to incorporate those into the calendar event. And then let's do how many slots we want to open for that. And then we're going to calculate the filled slots and remaining slots from that. And then we're going to use, I'm just going to put this here, event title, and I'm going to show you how to populate from here. And so let's just add a title just in case we want that as well. And I'll show you how to populate these. So let me delete the rest of these columns real quick. And then we can do a little bit of formatting on this just to make it a little easier to parse. That. All right, and so let's do a little bit of data validation. So I'm going to turn these into date drop-downs by clicking on that. And now if we double click here, we can select a date, start and end time. Once we fill in a little data, I'll add some number formatting to that. And then we can make these a little bit smaller as well. Maybe I'll wrap the text to here, something like that. We could do remaining, or just remain, make that shorter, event title. And then I'm just going to drag this down so we can scroll down and see that title there. So let's just make a sample event here, and then I'll walk you through what we need to populate it in the Google form and so forth. So let's just create one. Let's just say December 25th. We're going to make a sample event for Santa Claus. And so we can just make this 12 a.m. And let's just do 12:15 a.m. as our end time. And then our title, Santa Claus is coming to town. Gifts for all. And then slots, I'm just going to put one here, and then we'll demo how to do that. And then under filled slots, we're going to create our Google form next, and then we'll calculate the rest of these. So maybe the one we'll do right now is our event title. So you may want something like the start time or end time in that. And so let's look at how we put that together. So I'm just going to do something like this. We'll put together a quick string. Let's say we wanted to do the time and then the title. So we could do something like this. And to the start, back in here, grab another ampersand, and then start time to end time, and then maybe something like a dash, and we'll add that title. So right now it's really jacked up. We have numbers here, and so what's happening is these are numbers as the base of how they're stored, and it basically just displays them as a date. So that's what's happening here. And so what we can do here is we can do text formula around these, and then in this text formula we can format them as a certain thing. And so for example, here we could do December 25th, and so that's using the 3 M's to create that shorthand, or we can do 2 M's to get just the number. But I'm going to do 3 M's for that shorthand. If you want the longhand, you can just do another M like that. So there's our date. So we could add the year as well if you want to add the year, something like that. But I'll just stick it with the month and the day. And then these times look off too, and so let's wrap those with this text. And let's just do, let's see if this does it right. There we go, 12 a.m. And then here we can do, again, the same thing, text. And then we'll do the same formula here. And now you can see that kind of coming together. So one thing we could do as well here is, if we want to get rid of these zeros here, is we could do a little conditional statement here. And so let's just copy this part. And then what I'm going to say is if minutes v2 is equal to 0, we'll do this, otherwise that. And then what we'll do in here is get rid of those minutes. So let's check that out. And this is actually minute, not minutes. So let's check that out. So there it is, 12 a.m. We could get rid of that space there as well. 12 a.m. And then right now we're missing our final one. Let's reset that. So 12 a.m. to 12:15 a.m. So let's go ahead and just for the due diligence, let's do it here as well. And so I'm just going to take this whole thing and replace this whole thing between those two ampersands. And then we'll change this to C and C and C, just like that. So now we can see that coming in there. And so if we change this, for example, to 1 a.m., now it changes it to 1 a.m., just like that. So let's change it back to 12:15 a.m. And there we go. So we could do something as well if we want to wrap that time, let's say in parentheses. So if you kind of look at this, this is we're making a string. And so we use these double quotes and this is part of the string here with a space. And then we're using formula and putting them together with these ampersands. So we could add different things here. For example, if we wanted to wrap the time, we could go at the beginning of the string. So you can see it kind of updating here. And then let's go back down to the end. And then you can see now it's wrapping that time in parentheses. So you can kind of adjust this, play around with this as you like, and get the results that you're looking for. So we're going to use this. I just wanted to demo how you do event title like this in case you needed times on your slots, because basically this is what we're going to use to select events on our Google form. And so I'm going to change this to an array formula, and then we'll be good to go. So I'm going to just cut that, and then come here, and I'm going to put this in an array formula, and then wrap that in there. Array formula, if A2 to A is blank, do nothing, otherwise we'll do this. So I'm going to have to change all these and add a colon and that same column name. So that way these go all the way down as we add more data. And then we can close with our final parentheses. You can see when we have the right number, when you can see this first one highlighted. Then I can close with my closing bracket there. And now this shows up. So now if we add another one, let's say we add a New Year's, and maybe we just have actual meeting, something like that. You can see that showing up there. Then final yearly meeting, and you can see that show up there. So whatever these slots are like, or this could be a consultation, maybe something like that. And then you could set up some slots for that. And then you could have 2 people sign up for this slot. And so this description is also optional as well. All right, so we got enough here to roll forward. So let's, first of all, create our Google form. And so we're going to go to Tools, create a new form. And this came up with a crazy title here. So I'm just going to call this Event Slot Sign Up. And call it there. And so here, I'm just going to keep this super simple, but you can add as many questions as you need to capture what you want here. And so I'm just going to say select slot, and then I'm going to require this, and then I'm just going to add 2 here. So let's do one for the name. And then we want to capture the email as well. So we could add it here, or we can go to the settings and then collect emails. And so again, verified or responder input. So verified has to be Google, or responder input lets them paste in what they want. And then we can send them a copy of the response as well. So you can do that or leave it off, whatever you want there. So we're just going to start with this. So we have our email, our select slot, and we need to change this to drop down. And then we'll fill in these options, and then there's the full name. And make sure these are all required. Okay. So we're good to go here. So I'm going to copy this ID. So it's between this forward slash and the last forward slash there, that full alphanumeric. Copy that. And then we can come over here and we're going to create our app script. All right, I'm going to reset this, just give us a little more room here. And then in here, I'm going to do a constant, and we'll call this form ID, and then paste that ID inside of single quotes. You could do single or double quotes, either is fine. And then here, what we're going to do is call this update form. And then what we're going to need to do here is, let me actually name this, we'll call this, and then I'll hide this again. All right, so we have now this Google form. This is where it's going to dump those responses. So we'll get back to that in a minute, but we need a way to pull these event titles into here. So one thing I want to do is sort them probably by date. And then we also want to make sure that the remaining is greater than 0. And so for now, I'm just going to tie this to these, and then we'll come back and update that later. So here what we're going to do is available slots, and then I'm just going to do a sort, and then we're going to grab these, and we can sort it by this date, and true for ascending. We can also sort it by start time as well, in case there's more than one event in the day. And that looks great. So the only thing we want to add on here is also a filter. And I didn't add any things yet, but let me go back to events and H we want to use here. So I'm just going to grab one of these, and then on this filter, we're going to say if H is greater than 0. And there we go. So I can go ahead and get rid of the rest of these. And so this will be then our events or slots that we want to show up in our slots here. And so in here, let's go ahead and access our spreadsheet. We'll do that by spreadsheet app, get active spreadsheet, and I'm assigning it to this variable SS, and then we'll get that actual sheet. And so we'll do available slots. And so let's just call it slots sheet and use that camel case just to make that understandable. Available slots. And so then we just need to get the data from here. And so we'll just do let slots and then slots sheet get range. And since we didn't add any header or anything like that, we can start on row 1 and it's the first column. And then we just need to get the total number of rows on that sheet. And then only one column that we're getting. Then we're going to do a get values on that. And then we're just going to make that a flat array. So a flat array just simplifies it, and that allows us to go to our next step. So now we can get our form. And so we'll just do let form app, and open by ID. And we have that form ID right there. And then we need to get the correct item. And so we have different items in here. We need to get this one. So what we're going to do is use another little function here, just as a temporary thing. And we're going to get that form again. And then we're going to get items. Form get items. And then items for each. Little arrow syntax here. And then we're just going to log the title and the ID, just like that. And then let me go ahead and get this set up here. So this would be form item, form.get item by ID. and this will be our placeholder. All right, so let's go ahead and get our items. We will have to authorize a script at this point. So let's go ahead and run through that. And then there's just Google's disclaimer. So we're doing this, or you will be doing this on your own. So this is going to be fine. And then we'll go through and click allow. And then here is our titles and our IDs. And so there's that select slot and there's that ID that we need. So we can go ahead and copy that, X this out, go back here, and we can put that ID right in there. All right, so at this point, we don't need this any longer. You can keep it here if you want for reference later. But at this point, we can simply do form item set. Hold on, we need to get this one as a list item. Now we can do set choice values. There we go. And then we can do our slots. So that's all we need to set those options. And so let's go ahead and update form and run this function. There we go. Now it's done. Let's check our Google form and there's our slots. So that is working perfectly. So we're almost done actually with the basic, and then I'm going to go back through and show you how to add the functionality to add this to Google Calendar automatically. So let's finish wrapping up how to tie a response here into all events, and then we'll show you how to finish that. So filled slots. So when someone fills this Google form out and they select one of these, you'd have something like this show up in this form. So what we want to do then is count how many have been filled in and subtract them from these slots to get our remaining. So filled slots, we can do something like this, count if, and then look over here in this column. We can just do even B to B, and then come back here and compare it to our event title. And it's coming up with 1. Drag that down, there's 0 for that, and so that is appropriate. We delete this, you can see now it drops to 0. So that works great. Now I don't want to have to drag this for each row, and so I'm going to tuck this up in here in array formula as well. So equals, and then our array literal, and then I'm going to put this inside a string for our title, and then underneath this we're going to do array formula if d, or we could just do I2 to I is blank, we'll do nothing. Otherwise, we'll do our count if. And so what we're doing here is, as long as I2 to I, so down to the end of the sheet, if there's a value in it, we're going to do this count if. So let's go ahead and enter that, and there we go. So finally, we just need to get rid of these, and then I'm going to do a array formula. I'm just going to copy this one. And then we'll just update this to remaining or remain. And then here we're going to do, let's say G. And then we can get rid of this count if here. And then this one we want to do F2 minus G2 to G. And there's our remaining. So now, ideally, what should happen is when we submit the form, then this will drop to 0. Which will remove this one from this list of available slots. So here's the only thing we need to do before this will work, is we need to come back to our app script, and we make this run after the form is submitted. And in fact, there's a trigger that allows us to do just that. And so if we go to this triggers, we'll have it blank if you just create this script, and then we'll go to add trigger, update form, and then what we want to do is on form submit. And that's under from spreadsheet. Click save. And then it'll pop up right there. And so now at this point, this script will run every time the Google form is submitted. So the Google form submits, the entry drops in here, it adds a filled slot here, removes it, and then this one should disappear from our available slots. And so this one should drop down just to that December 31st. So let's go ahead and test that out. So over here, let's go ahead and publish this. So responders, we can change this to anyone with a link. and then publish this. And so let's go ahead and fill this out. And so we can copy this responder link here, open up a new window, and then we'll fill this out. And then we'll submit this. So now if we go back here, there's our submission. Popped up and drop that down to 0 remaining. There's our 1 available slot. And so let's just check to see if it removed it from the options. And sure enough, it did. So that is all working just as we want. And so next up, let's look at how to add a little more functionality to this. So first of all, I want to point out that you can use this even if you have more than one Google form tied to it. And so if you have multiple Google Forms for different events, you could still have those tied in. So the only thing you want to make sure is you had a different tab for each Google form, and then you would separate that. So for example, here, this slot sheet would then only tie to this form. So you need more than one form ID, obviously. And so you just separate those out and iterate through all of them. So you'd update basically all the forms when a form is submitted. And then the other thing as well is currently, this is only going to update when the form is submitted. But what if you add another event? So you don't want to wait until the form is submitted to update the dropdowns. And so let's actually add, first of all, a menu here. And so function on open. And so this one, because of this name on open, is a reserved one. That means this is going to run every time the Google Sheet opens. So what we're going to do here is create a little menu. Now, one thing to keep in mind is you can also add a timed trigger if you want this to update not just from the manual input, but maybe if you have this events coming from a third-party service. Maybe you're getting them added through something else. And so you may not have someone jumping in here to manually update it from the script. And so what we can do is add a time trigger. And so I'll show you how to do that here in a moment once we're done with this menu. So let's go ahead and create this menu. We'll do update available slots or sessions or whatever you call them. We'll say slots in this case, and then add item. And then we'll just say update slots, and then our update form function there, and then finally add to UI. So this will display a little menu right here. So let's go ahead and just run this manually from here. And this will run automatically every time you open the Google Sheets. Now, whenever you click on this one, it'll run the script. And so if you added a new event, it would then add it to that form. And so let's go ahead and do that real quick. Now, if we run this, and we go to this, you can see it popped up just like that. So the other way you could do that, let's say you had some other third party adding those events to this tab, and you don't want to have to do it manually from here. Then if you go back to this triggers, you could add a trigger for this update form, and then you could do it on a time-driven basis. And so this one gives you options to run it on a minutes. You can run it every couple minutes, every hour, or a couple hours. You can run it every day, or a weekly, or on a monthly basis. And so that's a way you could do that where someone wouldn't have to manually, and it would automatically update based on whatever events you had in here. And obviously it's still taking into consideration any form responses you had received. All right, so to wrap this up, let's look at what it looks like to add that automatically as an event on Google Calendar. And so one thing to keep in mind is we're going to end up creating a unique event for each person. So there's ways you can get around that, but what we're going to do is just create a unique event for each person. So if you had something where you're going to have like 25 slots and you wanted one calendar event, then you'd have to approach this a little differently. You have to do a search and stuff like that. But I'm just going to show you how to add it as a new calendar event. And so we have the first part of this form, update form here, and this runs every time the form is submitted. So we're just going to tag onto here. And so maybe we'll call this slots filled. And then we're going to use this name, and we're going to get the last thing added here and then use that email address on that Google form. So the other thing I'm going to do here is I'm just going to add a quick lookup here. And so we're going to do start date time and end date time. And then in here, we're going to do a X lookup on this. And then we're going to go back to all events. And then we need a start time and date. And so I'm actually going to add that to the right-hand side. So I'm just going to do this for now. And then let's come back over here and add 2 columns to the right. And then what we're going to do here is I'll just take this one, I think. And we'll do start date time. And then if A2 is blank, otherwise we're going to add that date time. So A plus B. So we're just going to add that time to that date. And so let's go ahead and format that. I'm done here, custom date time. Take something like this. Let's just streamline this a little bit. So let's do without leaving zeros. I'm just going to simplify this a little bit. And get rid of the seconds. There we go. Something like that. Oh, still got extra space there, looks like. So, here. There we go. There's our start. And then let's get our end one. And then change this to C. And here we go. Now let's change our format here just so we can quickly see that. All right. So now we can go back and pull this into our slots filled. And so all events I would be J, should be the next one over. And there we go. And then let's add the next one. So copy this one and make that K. All right, so the reason why we're doing this is so when we run the script, we can just ping our row of data and get these back. So let's actually just delete this row here, these extra rows. There we go. So we'll just get the last row from here and then get this data and ping our Google Calendar with those options. So we have our slots filled, and that will be, let's just call it our filled sheet. And by name. And then let's get our last booked. This will be our filled sheet. Get range. Filled sheet, get last row. And then the first column, number of rows is 1, and the number of columns, let's just get the last row or last column is like that. And then we'll do a get values and flat, just like we did with our slots. All right, and so now we have our last booked. And so what that's going to do is get our row data. Now it's an array, so to reference it, we could do let date time submitted would be last booked 0, because arrays start at 0, and this is how you'd reference. So we could go through and do the slot, so we can actually pull that here. Slot will be 1, and then let's get the other things we need here. We could get their full name, email address, start and end time. So the end one is 5, meaning if we start here at 0, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So this would be 5 in our array index. So with that info, now we can create our Google Calendar event. Now one thing we do need from our Google Calendar is the calendar ID. And so if you go to your Google Calendar and then go to the calendar you want to add it to, go to settings and sharing, and then scroll down until you find this calendar ID. And we're just going to copy that. And so we can add that up here as well. We do constant calendar ID, like that. And then if we come down here, let's get our calendar. Let calendar app, and then we can get that calendar. So we'll do get calendar by ID, and we have that here. And now we can create that event. So calendar create event. And so if you don't need that time, if you're doing all day ones, you can do this all day event just like this. And then all you need is a date, title date, and go from there. But we're doing a timed one, so we're going to do event. And then here we can do our title, start time, end time, and other options as needed. So for our title, we could do whatever we want here. We could take the Santa Claus is coming to town. We could take this whole thing, for example. Or we could put something specific in there. I'm just going to take this title here. And so our slot, just like that. And then our start time would be our start. But I'm going to put this inside of a new date thing, just so it converts it from a string to a date object in the script. And then we'll do the same thing with the end, just like that. And then we have a place where we can set options. So like location, stuff like that. So we go to calendar app. We can go here. We can go calendar. And then we can look at create event options here. And here's our parameters that we can do in our options. So we could add a description, location, guests, and send invites. So let's go ahead and use that. And so here in our options, we can do a description. And we do something like that. We can do a location, guests, and send invites. So let's add the guest and then do a send invites. So guests. And then here we're going to take that email. And then let me take a look here so that guests, okay, comma separated list of emails. So I just want to make sure it wasn't an object. And then send invites, true. So at this point, I don't know if we need to add a description here. Looks like I missed, oh, there we go. We need a close in parentheses there to match that one. All right, now it's saved again. So at this point, it should create a new calendar event with this as the calendar title. It'll add this email address as a guest, and I'll use this start and end time as part of the calendar. So let's go ahead and check that out. So we can just run the same thing again, update form, or we're gonna run it from here now, update slots. And then it should create a Google Calendar event for that 25. So this Christmas here. So let's go ahead and check that out. So we need to add that new permissions for accessing the calendar. We'll go through this again real quick. And so we can see now it's adding the calendars. So let's see if it added it. And there we go. So there's our event. You can see there's our guest awaiting. And it even has our time. And then the last thing we need to do before we finish this video is currently the script will automatically add the event or the last item regardless if it's already on the Google Calendar. And so we need a way to record if this event has already been added to the calendar, and if so, ignore it. And so we're just going to add one more column here, and we're just going to call this added to calendar. And then from here, let's go to our form. And so we have this last booked. And so here we can do let added to calendar will be last booked and 6. So we can actually pull this up here. And then we can say if added to calendar is equal to yes, we're just going to return, which will kill the script and keep it from running anymore. So now what we want to do here is after this, we want to add yes to this filled sheet. So let's get this down here. And then instead of, we have our row here, but instead of our column there, we want this column instead. And this is going to be column 7. So let's do 7 and then set value and then do yes. And then save it. And now if we run, let's do yes here real quick. And then actually let's just do this. Let's remove it from here and then delete this. And then let's add it. Let's run this to add it. Let's see if it adds that yes there. There we go. And let's see if it added that event back. There it is. So let's test this out. Let's run this again and see if it adds it again. So finish script. Let's refresh. And there's just that one event. So we just need to make sure we did that little bit of cleanup. Otherwise, it would keep adding events every time you tried to update. Should have been a pretty big disaster, especially if you had the time to trigger on this as well. Alright, so that is it for today's video. I hope this really sparks your creative juices on just all the different ways and places that you could use this. Basically, anytime you have some kind of event, and it could be one or more slots that you have, and you just need to be able to remove those options from the Google form as they are filled. So make sure to check out the other videos on our channel for more tutorials on both Google Sheets and AppScript. And as always, have a great day.